that reflect and adapt easily to our country's aspiration, whilst maintaining global relevance through numerous international recognition, partnership, and affiliation. STU has internationally respected and accepted qualification. It's a university that care enough to impart in you with the necessary tools and skills that you may need for global transformation. The university is situated in the dynamic city of peace, Sunyani, Ghana, one of the economic hubs in West Africa. STU has a vibrant and cosmopolitan group of students and academics on their way to reimagine the future. We care for the health.
Please let's give an applause. We can do better. Hello. So we won't waste much of our time. There has been an update on our program lineup. We are going to combine the morning and afternoon session. And so to do so, we are going to go just straight to the point. Yesterday we had the honor of hosting Professor Wole Soboyejo, and this morning he still has something to teach us. With a resounding applause, let us welcome Professor Wole Soboyejo of the SUNY Polytechnic of USA. You can do better. The man took a flight, took a bus to get to this place. Do better. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So once again, Can you hear me? Can you hear me at the back? All right. So once again, I want to say that what I'd like to do today is to share with you some ideas about how to build a research university. Now, much of this is informed by 40 years of life experience that I want to condense into 45 minutes of a talk. And I mentioned some of the people that have supported my efforts, but I'm going to really, first of all, tell you my story. Because I think without understanding my story, it's difficult to really understand what really drives me and what really ticks and drives me to try to do things that I've done. And I'm going to be really transparent with you just about where I've come from and what frames what I describe as 4 stages of a life. Okay? And that will be the first part of the presentation. The second part really looks at how you form research partnerships, going from very small groups, 1 or 2 colleagues who like each other and work together, and how that can evolve into centers and institutes, and how that can evolve ultimately into universities and ecosystems for innovation. And it's interesting just to see what are the lessons learned as one looks back over a period of 40 to 60 years of a life lived in ways that hopefully provide some inspiration for the future. I also want to express my appreciation to Professor Adinkra Appiah and the Sunyani Technical University community for helping us feel so welcome here. I want to thank all the colleagues and all the students, faculty, staff that have taken time to be here. And then, of course, in my case, I really have to tell you that I would not be here if not for just the cushion of family and support, and many people, policy people, that have believed in the things that I've tried to do. So I'm going to go back to the very beginnings. You know, I was born in California, in Palo Alto, when my parents were students, but they went back to Nigeria in 1965. And I remember at the time, as a boy growing up on the campus of the University of Lagos, being surrounded by all of these academics in this most idyllic environment that was then the University of Lagos. would ride my bicycle next to Sade Adu's father's garden. Sade is the great musician whose father had the most amazing garden. I was surrounded by economists, mathematicians that he inspired. And my father at the time was a professor. He would take me to class, and I would sit back and watch him tell jokes with his students and tell them about big things that they could do. And that's when I decided that, wow, I want to stay in this kind of place all my life, right? That's actually how I got this inspiration of wanting to try to be an academic. The problem was that at school, I spent most of my time playing. But my mother, God bless her, would sit with me and make sure that I studied. And I remember by the time I left that school, the teacher once said to me, why don't you just try to see what happens when you study? But those people really transformed my life. The other thing that transformed my life, which I remember most distinctly, was that my father set up a consulting engineering firm, and he became very successful. And I would see them designing these buildings, which, if you know Lagos, those are the beacon buildings in Lagos Island. All those skyscrapers were designed by my father's firm. And he had learned how to do consulting engineering, skyscraper design in San Francisco. And he took those skills and designed and made these things happen. And what fascinated me about that was I could see that engineers can bring groups of people together and make big things happen. And so in my mind, I just assumed that this is always possible. So I say this because at the end of this experience, I remember once asking him, what does it take to be a good engineer? And he said, teamwork. And I expected him to say mathematics or physics, but he said teamwork. And in the end, what I have applied is these principles that says that if you bring people together in different ways with some clear goals, you can achieve big things. Now, beyond that, I went to school in England, and I went to high school, actually, a boarding school in England, where, to be honest with you, I was different from all the boys. And that was the first place where I really had to really live with the grounding that I had as an African in a truly international community. But I learned how to work with people of all types and how to really overcome in a place where I was different. But ultimately, I also was able to learn the culture of learning and scholarship at King's College and also at Cambridge University, where I did my PhD. Now, for all of you that have done PhDs, you know that there are times when you start the PhD where you are struggling with the work you're doing. And in my case, I started the PhD at Cambridge, and I would ride through the backs of the colleges at Cambridge, which was established in 1209. And I would imagine people like Isaac Newton that had been there before me. And I would ask myself, what the heck am I doing here, right? What the heck am I doing here? This is not real. And then I would go to the library, and every day I would go to the library, I would meet Sir Alan Cotterill, who was my advisor's advisor and the scientific advisor to the Queen of England. And he would be making notes, just like I was, as he read the journals. And something in me said, if Alan Cotterill is doing this after 50 or 60 years of scholarship, I should also try to do the same. And I would go to lunch, and I would see Stephen Hawking there with his students, surrounded by postdocs and students. And I would say, my God, with all the challenges that he has, here's perhaps one of the greatest minds just enjoying the business of being an academic. And then I would have a drink with my advisor, John Knott, who at the time was the best person in the world in this field. And he always had this knack of making complicated things simple. And little did I know until I went to my first conference with him, that he was really the father of the field. Although he'd been trained by Alan Cottrell, he had written the books, he had built the reputation. And in just 3 years of working with him, at the end of it, he said to me, he said, you know, Wole, you know more about this field than anybody else. But I didn't believe him. But somehow, the process of interacting in that engaging community transformed me in ways that I didn't know. So what did I learn from this place as I look back? And it's important that I refer to it as a university that was created in 1209, because this is important to recognize that universities, when they're successful, exist over centuries, introduce cultures over centuries that transformed communities over time. And what I realized is it's actually really critical to have a research culture, one in which people are dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge in deep ways that allow them to deeply understand something in an ecosystem that supports students, faculty, technicians, staff, researchers, that work with industry and government to drive development in society. And that was the ecosystem that they had created that I enjoyed. But then the benefits of a lifetime of focus is really you begin to understand something after you've studied it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years in ways that you can simplify and share with students and others such that they benefit for that deep focus. Alan Cottrell, for example, gave a lecture on 4 lectures on the theory of metals. And when I went to that lecture, within half an hour, I looked at myself and I said, I don't know anything about metals. And he inspired people to seek a deeper understanding in ways that make that department and that university one of the very best. And then the other thing that's critical is curiosity. The culture of curiosity means you're curious about your environment in ways that provide sources of inspiration. And this culture of excellence means you're dedicated as a group to really pursue excellence in all its ways, using some combination of theory and experiments, grounded, of course, in the natural sciences and engineering, but inspired by the environment. Now, the other thing that was curious is that people didn't work all the time. I would show up to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, go for a coffee break at 10:30, ideas that will win the Nobel Prizes of tomorrow, which is why till today, that university continues to produce those thinkers that shape the future of human civilization based on a culture that works. And the research was always done in collaboration with industry or government to amplify its impact, which basically means that the industry that cares about this uses this and hires their graduates, and the government that cares about this leverages this to increase its impact. And then the last thing, which is critical, is somehow these students, when they graduate, not only from the scholarship they get in the classroom, but from the exposure they get to industry, are ready to work on day one and gradually grow into leaders. So ultimately, the question then is, how do you create this in other places? The truth is, you have to create the ecosystem in a way that allows it to function for you. You also have to know the difference between what is academic and what is truly important in the real world. And so when I finished my PhD in 1988, I was lucky enough to get a job working in industry. And I wondered, as I walked into this company that had 150,000 employees, why is it that they wanted to hire me? And it turns out that some of the things that I learned could be applied to create new products in the aerospace arena, from helicopters to airplanes to space ladders, all of those things could benefit from research that had been done in a way that will enable us to design the next generation of them. And ultimately, what I then learned is that for us to really know the problems of the world, we have to collaborate with industry, and we have to be humble enough to ask industry about what their problems are, what their challenges are, and also what their grand aspirations and opportunities are. So if you look at this and what happened, what basically happened was that I was lucky enough to work with a group of 100 PhDs, and the guy who was the boss of my group said to me, he said, Wole, his name was Charlie Whitsett, he said, you can do anything you want to do, you can think of anything you want to do, and I will support you. The only thing you need to do is every 3 months, I want you to go to the Air Force, I want you to go to the company, and just tell them about what you've been doing and listen to them and find ways in which you can do things that are relevant to them. And you might say, well, what's this mean? Unknown to me, what he did was to put me on a path where I started networking with all of the people that I needed to bring together to do something. At the beginning of this journey, I remember calling one of them, and he said, hey, who the heck are you? The guy said to me. I said, well, I'm this person. He said, well, I fund this person and that person. Why the heck should I fund you? So I said, I have ideas. He said, call me back later. A few months later, he retired, and one of the guys that I'd been networking with took his job. And that opened up all of that to me because I had been networking in the community. And so those networks that you have, including attending conferences where you shouldn't just give your paper, but network in the committees, begin to build your personal network. And you have to be extremely careful not to offend anyone. So in one of these sessions, I met a program manager who presented an idea that I didn't agree with, if I knew the idea was wrong. And I was tempted to just say, hey, you're wrong. And something in me said, you got to hold back, until eventually he came with me to the airport. Something in me kept on saying, you got to hold back. 6 months later, he says to me, you know, Wole, you owe me. I said, what do you mean I owe you? He says, well, you know, I was on 2 grant awarding committees where your name came up, and I recommended you highly. And those are 2 National Young Investigator Awards that set me on a career going forward that I would not have gotten if I had opened up my mouth and said I disagree with you, right? And that was those was the first $1 million grant that I ever got that came from the networking, but I could have destroyed if I just wanted to assert myself and say he was wrong and I was right. So there are many things you learn from these. And by the way, as you begin to network, people find your value, consulting opportunities open up, research opportunities open up. And it is when those people know you, not just because you write a proposal, that they will fund you to do the things that make the impact that you're all trying to achieve. Now, in terms of research, it was interesting just to look back at how the work that is done can drive transformations that happen over time. So at the time, people had this idea. It was after the Concorde. They wanted to make hypersonic vehicles that could shrink the world. What does that mean? If you can fly at hypersonic speeds, you can go from Tokyo to New York in 2 hours. You can go from Ghana to London probably in 30 minutes. And so that shrinks the world, and it makes lots of things possible. And in that world, you can now begin to say, what does it take to make this happen? You got to have, in a way, high temperature materials, because when those airplanes re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, the temperatures rise to levels between 1400 and 2000 degrees centigrade. And under those conditions, you need really good structural materials that can take the heat and the load. The problem is the materials that can take the heat can't take the load. The materials that can take the load can't take the heat. So you have to develop these new materials. And I was in a place where I could play, and some of that playing resulted in materials that got applied in high temperature structural engines, also got applied in military engines, and then through there into commercial engines, and are now used across the world in almost all commercial engines today, aerospace engines. It turns out those aerospace engines are the same engines they use to generate electricity. And so the impact of doing this work is quite significant. And then at the end of all this, I was caught with this bug of just wanting to be in a university. I wanted to have my own students. I wanted to do more than aerospace. And so I was lucky enough to get a job as a professor at a university. So when I went to Ohio State University, somebody called me up from Japan. And so, I was thinking, I'm a young professor. This guy wants to visit me from Toyota Research Labs in Japan. So I thought this was kind of cool. He wants to talk about materials we've been working on. And those materials were basically made from titanium alloys. The idea we had was if you alloy with small amounts of boron, those form these TIB whiskers. And without you doing anything, just controlling the composition of that, if you extrude or mechanically work those align in one direction. So you make these in situ composites that have really good balance of mechanical properties with a very simple idea. And the improvements in those materials basically enabled them to be used in valves, connecting rods, gears, and different automotive components that they had started to make at Toyota Motor Corporation. And those improvements in performance then justify applications in vehicles such as the Lexus that they were introducing at the time. And what this basically shows is the value of doing research that drives commercialization in ways that drive transportation, in ways that drive civilization. Now, one of the things I would love to see would be to see this kind of capacity transfer into Africa, to see an aerospace industry that's driven by the knowledge of people in ways that I know we can achieve as we set ourselves on this journey. Now, at this point in my career, and this was in the 90s, I was feeling pretty cool with myself, and I was thinking, wow, I'm doing a lot of interesting things. Later, I started working on what I call sexy aerospace materials that can morph and do all sorts of things. And so I had a conversation with my mother. And so my mother said, Wole, what are you doing? Oh, I said, Mom, I'm doing some really cool, sexy stuff. And she said, how sexy? I said, very sexy, And then she said, well, okay. What difference do these things make to the lives of people? And then she made it worse and said, especially people in Africa, where you're from. And I had to confess, I could not respond. I could not respond. But it got me on a path of thinking and remembering where I had come from, where people don't have potable water, where people don't have reliable electricity, where people have health challenges, and where people cannot necessarily afford a home of their own. And so my mindset started to change. And I remember going to MIT for a year, thinking I would discover some really great professors, and there are many great professors, of course, at MIT, doing great things. But I couldn't convince myself that I should be working on those problems, because there are lots of people working on those problems. Then the question is, Why should I work on them when I don't bring anything into this that's different? So out of that whole effort really came a different path where I started to ask myself, what can I, as somebody working in the United States, do to connect to Africa? And I had written a proposal to the National Science Foundation where they basically said, well, we don't fund Africa, we fund the US only. So it was awkward for me to achieve what I wanted to do until Bill Clinton visited Africa at the end of the 90s and came back with a mandate to request for research collaborations between Africa and the US. So at this point we had a meeting at the Farm Inn in Pretoria where a bunch of scientists from the US and Africa came together to discuss areas of collaboration. During that meeting, there were many people screaming, but I made copious notes that basically documented the things that the Africans wanted to do and the things that the US folks wanted to do. And we tried to find the intersection between those things. And essentially, those intersections identified the need to do work in materials for health, materials for water purification, materials for energy, and materials for sustainable, affordable housing. And what we then started to do was to bring people from different disciplines to collaborate in each of those areas. So we brought about 10 people, sometimes as many as 20 people from Africa, from the US, that wanted to collaborate to find solutions to problems in those areas. And then all of a sudden, my role changed from finding the problem you want to solve to bringing the teams together to solve those problems through research and innovation, and then making sure that those ideas will somehow connect to reality over time. And in the process of doing this, we started training lots of graduate students across multiple fields. We started doing work that sometimes got licensed and got used in the real world. And we started creating value from bringing those groups together. But the magic was, how do you bring those groups together to solve problems? And what we did was to really show that once you get groups together and you discuss clearly, strategically what you want to do, you can actually get the resources to transition from ideas to reality. So I just wanted to share with you what I learned from those efforts. So you have to have this process that goes from ideas to reality. What are the dots that you need to connect? You need to find program managers that believe in you and engage them in that process. Don't just write useless proposals to people who don't know you. Very likely you'll be rejected or you're wasting your time. As you visit these different folks, establish networks, establish friendships, build trust in them in a way that allows them to get to the point where they say to you, write a white paper for me. I have some resources I want to commit to you. This works, by the way, in Africa, and it works anywhere in the world, where as people begin to understand the work and the ideas that you have, and they believe in you, you get resources. And those resources, if you prove yourself, allow you to get more resources. And the business of writing a proposal needs to have at least 3 components. One is, say what you want to do and why it is important. If you cannot say what you want to do in one sentence and why it's important, don't do it. And then the other is, say how you're going to do it in terms of the critical steps that you're going to make, so that it shows that you've thought this through in ways that will connect your efforts to the outputs that you want. And then you always leave this at the end by saying who will benefit from this work if you are allowed to explore or pursue it. So this is always at the back of my mind whenever I write any proposal, because that framework motivates the work, explains what you're going to do in steps, and also shows the impact of that work over time. And then once you really, as you do this, you always need to do it with a team. And in today's world, many of the really significant opportunities are with a team. And so work with that team to start building the nuts and bolts of the proposal. And in my mind, there are two parts of the proposal. There's the boilerplate, all the budget, all those things, and they're fine, you have to do them. But there's also the true science and engineering in the proposal. And you must have, if you're doing something scientific, some fundamental question that motivates your work or some real problem that you're trying to solve. And you have to avoid Me Too work where you're just trying to do the same thing because somebody else is trying to do it. And as you do all of this, remember that most programs are research reimbursement exercises. So what that basically means is that you start doing the work with your team that you want to do, and you present the results, some of which you generated before you got the award. And also, by the way, don't show all the results in any single report. Always leave something behind to show in the next. So when you build all of this, you find that you are better able to not only be supported, but you're also better able to be successful with many different agencies. Now, when I look at all of this, I think I want to summarize things that I learned in the first 12 years of my working life. At the beginning of my working life, I was honestly full of energy. And there were times when I felt like I needed to sprint all the time. But the problem with sprinting is you get tired. And so I actually realized life is a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to slow down and think about the impact of your life over maybe 3 decades. And so in that sense, it's important to do work, not just work, but purpose-driven work. I could have kept on making sexy airplanes, but quite honestly, I'm more motivated to solve problems. In the States, one of the most successful technical universities is Georgia Institute of Technology. So at Georgia Institute of Technology, what I found is that the professors and the staff cooperate with each other. Often you will see a team with a very senior professor supporting the junior professor to be the lead and working collaboratively for the success of the group. So under those circumstances, the next 5 years you will see that junior professor has now become a middle-level professor, and the senior professor, before he or she retires, is supporting the group in ways that promote group success. And if you look at Georgia Institute of Technology, she's risen from being maybe number 30 to 50 in the US to being number 1 to 3 in most technical fields. And I maintain that the key to their success is how they collaborate to build the whole institution. So this Georgia Tech syndrome is important. And then the other part that is important is people get so busy, they don't have time to reflect and think. How can you be an academic if you don't leave time to reflect and think? So we almost must leave at least 1 hour of each day to reflect and think, to learn and to network and engage in activities that allow us to be really impactful. We obviously want to work in teams, and it's also important to work on problems that matter. Otherwise, quite honestly, you can work on problems that pay and achieve nothing at the end of a life. So for us, what this means is, as we move forward beyond those 12 years, what I have focused on is people, potential, and ideas. This is really important because most professors look only at the current state. And so a good example of this is when I would try to get professors to welcome university researchers from Africa, very often on the West side, they're looking for who's going to help me write my nature paper tomorrow. They don't look at the potential of that person to help you do more than that. And so often, many African scientists, in my opinion, are diamonds in the rough, who once you put them in the right environment and you nurture them and polish them and engage them fully, they can do more than just write your nature paper. And so in our group, what we've done is welcome African scientists from many different places across the continent to work in our lab. In the last 25 years, we have had definitely more than 200 visitors from different universities that have come to do their research, do their PhDs, go back, many of whom are professors today across the world. And what we have discovered through that is that when the folks go back, they are successful. Through this process, you know, the way I like to describe my life, or at least my wife describes it, is she says that I have two families, my PhD students and graduate students that are scattered across the world. And I know this, and in fact, it's almost like those folks who have now graduated with PhDs from me, and there are 74 of them, more than 10 of them are in Ghana, some of whom are in this room. And they now have PhD students, and their PhD students also have PhD students. And there's nothing that gives me greater joy than to see that propagation. And I know for all of us that are academics, those are the things that matter to us. So I want to move on now and talk about building institutions and building institutions with a research mandate. And it's interesting how you think you're just doing your job can open up different types of opportunities. So in the early 2000s, there was a conversation between the head of the World Bank and the African heads of state. At the time, the guy's name was Jim Wolfenson. He asked the audience and said, what is the single thing that the World Bank could do to develop Africa? So sitting in the audience of African leaders was Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela said, invest in science and technology. And so the World Bank folks went back and started thinking of what could the World Bank do to really develop institutes of excellence in science and technology in Africa, which led to the idea of the Nelson Mandela institutions. So at the time, people knew about my interest in Africa, and so they invited me to help to bring the scientists and engineers together to develop the vision of what then became the Nelson Mandela institutions. And so within that framework, I had an opportunity to meet with African heads of state and to make the case for the vision of the Nelson Mandela institutions. And we thought about an African Silicon Valley. We thought about how to build institutions of excellence. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of that story, along with the opportunities I've had to help build institutions in the United States. So here's the vision of the Nelson Mandela institutions. In the end, the ideas came from Nelson Mandela. They were implemented by the World Bank. In Tanzania, the government gave 5,000 acres of land to build the first of these. It turns out, because of the challenges of roads, I remember making a suggestion that they convert an old agricultural research institute, Kamatech, into the first campus. And they did it, and that is now the Nelson Mandela AIST. In Nigeria, I remember having a conversation with President Obasanjo for 10 minutes. And I'll never forget, at the end of these 10 minutes, sitting with Nasser El-Rufai, he said, let's do it. And sitting in the map, we carved out over 100 hectares of land to become the African University of Science and Technology, with $40 million of support that came from the President's Fund. So what I learned from this is that it is possible as an academic to have a vision, to articulate it to government and policyholders in ways that matter. Now, in the case of the AUST, the African University of Science and Technology in Abuja, one of the best parts of my own life as an academic was actually going there and working on the ground with the builders of the university to teach the students with this vision of producing folks that will go out into the rest of the continent to really develop Africa. And we're showing you the early stages of the AUST and some of the graduates, the early PhDs. That institution has now produced over 300 PhDs in the last 10, 15 years, many of whom are professors all over Africa. People like Musa Abdullahi is a graduate of AUST, and others here at Sunyani. And there are many of them scattered across the world, including one that's a professor at MIT. What this basically shows in my mind is that here in Africa, we have the opportunity to teach the next generation with a vision, and we can do this collectively with the experience that we have gained. In Tanzania, there was the vision of a new African Silicon Valley. Between Mount Meru and Mount Kilimanjaro, this African Institute of Science and Technology was built. The focus is on the life sciences and biotechnology, and that institute is now successful, but of course it's still in the early stages of life as an institute for science and technology. I'm talking about the rundown agricultural research lab that I said should be converted. This is what happened when they converted that into the Nelson Mandela AIST, a totally beautiful campus in a part of the world in which the biodiversity is really rich. Now, I want to take this journey further and talk about how the same kind of thinking extends into a framework that goes from the US to Europe in ways that I think are tangible. Now, we are in the era of interdisciplinary research, and I've been lucky enough to be in some positions where I've worked with technical universities such as this one to build strategies for doing research. So the thinking was the following. If you just do research as individuals in individual departments, then what you have is silos. So you can have mechanical engineering, civil engineering, physics, mathematics, chemistry. Each one of them is a silo. And then you have to put a lot of money into equipment for each department, duplicate many things that are there, and you are doing the usual things. On the other hand, if you think about interdisciplinary collaboration and you form interdisciplinary groups, you can start identifying areas in which you have groups of people from multiple fields making an impact. And so at the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, where I served as provost, what I did initially as dean and then as provost was to bring people from multiple fields together to form a group called Materials Reimagined. And those people came together and started pursuing collaborations with industry, collaborations with major grant givers, and they became extremely successful. The other area that was identified was in the area of bio. Bio basically means all the intersections from multiple disciplines with bio or life sciences. And that cluster over time also grew to be successful. And then the third area was what we call Smart World. Smart World was really the early stages of AI-informed discovery. And that group also grew to be successful. And in the case of WPI, they were interested in global initiatives of different types. And there were people from the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, engineering that wanted to do projects that really impact the world. And so instead of trying to project WPI across N departments, the goal was to project WPI across these areas that were decided by the faculty, where groups of people were then given seed grants, center grants to develop this. When this effort was started about 10 years ago, WPI was a Research 2 university, R2, according to the Carnegie classification. Due to the collaborations that existed between all these groups, the research funding grew from $10 million to $50 million. And just recently, WPI was voted as a R1 university through these collaborations that bring groups of people together. But you also have to define the things that stitch the place together. We wanted to create a diverse and equitable community. We wanted sustainability to be a major theme. We wanted this whole notion of entrepreneurship and innovation to be woven in. And we also wanted a different kind of learning, which is project-based learning that helps the students to absorb practical ways of doing things along with learning in teams. And we wanted to be built into those students this idea of design thinking and a maker culture. So when you do all of this as the foundational underpinnings, and you create community and foster collaboration and establish strategic alliances with different groups, what you then do is you create the fabric for an institution of excellence. So if I look at my experience of serving at WPI, there are some of the things that I learned. One is you need to figure out how you're going to build your reputation. And so the focus was a place that combines theory with practice. And so once you combine theory with practice and you use project-based learning to guide the teaching and engage the students in solving problems that are local and global, you basically produce graduates that are ready to work on day one. And that is the secret sauce. As you develop all of this, you have to promote a culture that balances teaching and research. There are lots of places that only value research. Those are terrible places to go to study. There are lots of places that value only teaching. If you do teaching with no research, before very long, what you teach is no longer relevant. The balance of teaching and research is critical. It also turns out there are different types of scholarship. There's a scholarship of discovery, scholarship of engagement. All sorts of different kinds of scholarship need to be valued, and you need to value both teaching professors and research professors and provide security for all. And as you do this, you need to pick the fields that are unique to you that not everybody else is doing. And so, for example, in this case, WPI decided that they wanted to focus on materials engineering, not necessarily materials science and engineering. How you do that matters. The data science became a major focus, and they are now splitting that into AI. The interface between life sciences and biomedical engineering was thought of something they wanted to focus on. Autonomy became an area. And then fire protection and engineering is one of these fields that very few places pursue. And so in these distinctive areas, they became the best, and that is how they have built their reputation. Now, in the last part of this, I want to talk about SUNY Polytechnic Institute. We are a university that was created in 1966 with the view of really producing initially in the upper division college people that were ready to world and build the Mohawk Valley. So the Mohawk Valley is shown here, and here is the current campus of SUNY Poly. We sit on 800 acres of land, and the state has invested in this to be a premier public polytechnic that will provide really key human capital for an emerging new Silicon Valley. Now, in this kind of situation, I was hired about a year and a half ago to work with those that are on the ground to develop the institution and try to take this to the next level. So what we decided to do was to develop a strategic plan. So the strategic plan enables you to bring all the key ideas together in a way that can enable you to chart a strategy that will take the institution to the next level. And so a key thing was this idea of engaging a big ideas culture. And if you know anything from what I've shown you, this really came from my childhood. So this idea that we can think of something big that we want to be collectively and achieve it is very critical to bring people together in an organization. And I think that a key approach, especially today, is how you engage interdisciplinary research, education, and innovation with a focus on the impact you want to have, and how you leverage partnerships of different kinds and investments to translate strategy into tactical actions and success. So for us, the key components of this are, we want our students to be successful. We want that to be a reflection of who we are. And that has always been the outcome from a SUNY Poly education. We want to develop our brand, and we are different from others in a way that impacts us and our external partnerships in ways that we think about in very intentional ways. We want to build our campus infrastructure, both virtual and physical, to ensure that anybody that comes there really is in a place that has 21st century infrastructure. And where we're lacking, we're always working to figure out ways to find the resources to ensure that our campus infrastructure is consistent with our aspirations. And we want to have the kind of academic excellence that we want. And that academic excellence, by the way, is not only that of the professors, it is also that of the staff that work in the university and that of the administration that support this, where there must be continuous professional development and currency. So as you do this, you need to have collaborations with industry, with higher ed, with different agencies, with government and community. And the role of the administration and the leader is almost like a choir orchestra coordinator that tries to make all of these things work as you form partnerships with those around you to really ensure that all those stakeholders really feel that you're working for the development of the region and the community. Now, here's also where you can start thinking about what's next and how do you brand that thing that's next. So most of you know, of course, of Silicon Valley, of the Raleigh-Durham Triangle. What we are building around SUNY Poly is the SUNY Poly trifecta. The SUNY Poly trifecta looks at collaborators in the areas that we want to reach, where we say we want to do business materials and advanced manufacturing as one of our clusters of excellence. We want to do health sciences and biomedical engineering as another cluster of excellence. And we want to be at the heart of this information technology, AI, cyber, quantum cluster. And we've drawn a triangle between those three and looked at what is the research, innovation, and workforce development that we can do to drive the development. Who are the people that we can partner with to achieve this impact? And how do we make sure that the net effect of our efforts is economic development and prosperity for the community in which we serve. When you do this and you draw a radius of 1 hour around our campus, we then have partners that we work with, and we also have partners like Sunyani Technical University that we aspire to collaborate with to increase our global imprint. So with ideas like this, we have a strategic plan, and the strategic plan identifies areas of collaboration: robotics, advanced manufacturing, AI, cybersecurity, smart and sustainable materials, health sciences, biomedical, and quantum sciences and technologies. Those areas stretch us as a research institution. They give us the opportunities to partners in ways that build our impact. And ultimately, for the politicians that support us, it enables them to say that, yes, this is the premier New York Polytechnic that serves the state. And once you are able to do that, you can then motivate significant funding. So recently, we got $44 million to build our infrastructure out in robotics and advanced manufacturing and in the health sciences. Here's the governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, in the top image, visiting us to present the check. And we're working with our faculty and our staff on projects that are delivering on that promise. We're also in the middle of a tech corridor that runs through our region, where you have companies such as Tesla and Micron really setting roots. Those companies need our graduates, and we're pulling them into an advisory board that is helping to shape what we do in our curriculum, and also helping shape what we do in our research and workforce development. And right on the campus, we have two major semiconductor companies. One is Danfoss, and then the other one is Wolfspeed. What we try to do is to leverage that for job opportunities for our students, internships, co-ops, scholarships. We're also building labs in those buildings to make sure that our research is focused on the true needs of industry. And so what is important is not just to do research, but to connect that research to the prosperity of these companies and the prosperity of our region. And here's our Lieutenant Governor, Tony Delgado, who was there to commission one of our latest labs in packaging of microelectronic structures. We formed a global center for advanced manufacturing, which Tabiria and I coordinate. That is a center that reaches out to universities such as Sunyani and others to really do leading edge work in additive manufacturing, robotically assisted manufacturing, in ways that can connect our groups to you. And I really urge those that have an interest in this to please talk to us whilst we're here, because we're really looking forward to welcoming more of you to our campus. And through these kinds of collaborations, we're now beginning to access group grants. So just this year, Bill Thistleton and his team were able to be part of an effort that was supported by the US Senate and the House to provide $9 million for us in AI-funded research. So once you begin to form the groups, those groups open up opportunities, provided you have a strategy that enables you as part of that group or those groups to be part of a rising tide. So what I've learned in this is that it is critical to have a research and innovation culture. And then building on this, you must have partnerships, and that culture must be one that's focused on long-term impact, not just short-term. It's important at the beginning to ask the right questions. A lot of times we rush into things without asking the right questions, and we waste our time. In most cases, problem solving needs to really think about, how do I address local and global challenges, and how do I make a difference? This requires partnerships to achieve that impact, and you need to be fundraising with people that want to achieve the impact that you want. If you're writing a proposal to somebody who has different goals, you're wasting your time. In terms of building institutions, you must have a clear vision of what you want that institution to be. You must have a strategic plan that says, I want to be New York's premier public polytechnic that prepares workers that are ready to work and lead in a way that transforms the community. Or we want to be Ghana's premier technical university that prepares students that are ready to work on day one and lead as they evolve and become seasoned professionals. There needs to be that clarity. And once you have that clarity, the value of the technical university becomes clear. And that vision, of course, must be integrated with mission, values, and strategy to achieve the desired goals. And this idea of values is absolutely important. If you say we value community, that affects how people behave. If you say we value respect, that affects how people behave. And if you own those values, when people come into your community, they know your difference. They experience it in ways that matter. And as you inform strategy, build pillars around which you want to really build. So for example, student success, if that's important to you, make it one of your pillars. If branding is important to you so people get to know who you are, make it one of your pillars. If your campus infrastructure is part of the challenge, make it one of your pillars. And always at the heart of every university, academic excellence is critical. And be dedicated to that, but in ways that nurture students into excellence. And when you have strategy, it's not enough. You have to go from strategy to tactics. Tactics is the moves you're going to make to score. And ultimately, as you go from tactics to implementation, you need to have a monitoring and evaluation team that's monitoring those things and grading you in a way that allows you to see how well you're moving to the reality. But most importantly, celebrate your successes. Celebrate your milestones. Because it's hard work. And it's too much hard work when you're only working without celebrating. So, just before I finish, as we move into this era of the fourth industrial revolution, there are some opportunities that I see. So I look at Sir Sam Jonah. He's Ghanaian. And he was the chairman of the board of Ashanti Goldfields. So when I look at people like this, I say, Africa has all these resources, and we have shown that Ghanaians can lead those companies not only in Ghana, they lead them across all of Africa and all across the world. What we need to do is to use this type of a person as an inspiration for Africa. I'd ask the question, how do we get Africans like Sam Jonah to work with the rest of the world to take these mineral resources and agricultural resources that represent a third of the world's resources and convert them into wealth for all of Africa? That is the challenge. Now, people like Dangote have done it by creating industry, and that industry is taking that raw material out of the earth and processing it and adding value to it in ways that make Dangote the 16th richest man in the world. In my opinion, sitting in this audience, I hope, are young folks who should aim to be the next Dangote for all of these resources for all of Africa, who should be inspired by people like Sir Sam Jonah to have the background, the clarity of thought to make that their own. Because as they develop those products, they create the jobs for the next generation, they create the prosperity for all of Africa, which in my mind could be the richest continent in the world. And by the way, it's not only with physical stuff, it's also with energy resources. Somebody said, well, there's an energy crisis in Africa. That's totally not true. If you look at Africa, we have geothermal resources on the east that can provide all of the energy, a third of the continent's energy needs. We have the solar energy in the Sahara that could provide a third of the continent's energy needs. We have the oil and gas in the Gulf of Guinea that has 10% of the oil and gas reserves in the world. We have the coal resources in South Africa that could provide a third of the continent's needs. And we have additional oil that spans the region from Mozambique through Kenya into Sudan. And in Niger, we have uranium that is sufficient to power many of the nuclear plants in the world. So Africa doesn't have an energy crisis. What we need is a strategy for how we harness those for the good of all Africans and the good of the world in ways that add value to those resources. We don't need to wait for somebody else to come and do it for us. We need to do this with intelligence, with research, with strategy, with implementation and tactics. And as we do this, we must create businesses driven by those resources. We must engage advanced manufacturing techniques, such as laser-based additive methods, in ways that enable us to leapfrog. We must also see the emerging opportunities in e-vehicles, as the president or the vice chancellor of this university sees, and the role that batteries play in driving these new e-vehicles, which essentially are structural batteries, which means it's easy to do if we engage this in a way that makes Sunyani, for example, a special place for research and development in this area. We must build gigabatteries. And one of the things I said to Musa Abdullahi, who's got his PhD in batteries, is let's work on transitioning those ideas to reality, not just do the research. And it doesn't have to start big. You can think about building industry in containers, where you start small. And if what you do there is valuable, those small businesses that you start in containers in your garage can emerge into the big businesses of tomorrow. And we need to educate our young folks in robotics. Use the robotics competitions to stimulate and inspire their interest in STEM. Bring in the Ghanaian rock stars and musicians and artists to help connect to them as we use these kinds of inspiring methods to inspire the next generation. And I was very excited to see some of the students here that are doing robotics, engaged in competition, and doing this in a way that almost feels like the way we used to play soccer when I was a boy, right? In a way that you can see is normal and organic and can grow into the workforce of tomorrow. Now, as we do all these things, it's kind of interesting to see how you're going about doing science, and then one day you get a message from the UN Secretary General, right? And so one day I was invited to be on the UN Secretary General's Scientific Advisory Board. And I was surrounded by 6 or 7 Nobel Prize winners and all sorts of really distinguished people. And then the Secretary General will come and say, we're doing the Sustainable Development Goals. We want advice on this, and we want it to be scientific, evidence-based. And one day I found myself at the top of the UN building, and I was there with the Secretary General at the very top floor, giving advice, and the Secretary General basically was telling us how the advice was being used. And I had to scratch my head and say, you know, I'm an African boy from Abeokuta, but somehow in the process of just trying to be a scientist and an engineer, I get to give advice to the UN Secretary General, and by God, it's going to actually have some influence that actually happens to affect the UN SDGs. So the lesson is, it can be any one of us. And as we commit ourselves, we need to commit ourselves to something that's bigger than us, where our development is not just development for ourselves, but for the sustainable development of the world. And as we do these different things that can impact any one of these sustainable development goals, what we can do is really make a difference. And I hope that what you can see is that technical universities such as Sunyani Technical University have a special role to play for sustainable development, provided we make purpose-driven activities such as research our goals. And we can think about the needs in energy, in water, in infrastructure, in health, as real human needs that motivate our group activities, where we can start to build partnerships with individuals and small groups and larger groups in ways that make a difference. And as we do this, we start having some success working together, and some of those will grow as we work together more. And we can begin to have distinctive impact in this unique part of the world that's close to the wildlife of Ghana, that many people want to come and visit, in a way that makes this an interesting and different place to come to. But let those not just be ideas that sit in the lab. Let those be ideas that go from ideas to markets, markets that are local and global. And leverage the partnerships that we have with business, with industry, with government, with policymakers, to develop ecosystems of success that use science, technology, and innovation as engines of sustainable development during this era of the fourth industrial revolution. And as you do all of this, think of yourself as the transformation. Be the transformation. Let your experience and your imagineering be your sources of inspiration for a lifetime of purpose. Form internal and external groups that reinforce you, that enable you to increase your impact, and do this in ways that scale your impact with time. And remember, success is not based on intelligence. Success, true success, is based on teamwork and being constructive over a lifetime of continuous learning. A lifetime of continuous learning is what every academic should pursue. Renew yourself every 10 years by learning something new. Interact with young people and learn from their culture in ways that keep you relevant for life. And as you learn continuously, let your passion be the fuel for the impact that you would like to have. Thank you very much.
Wow, I promised you, and we have delivered beyond comprehension. I told you you would be inspired. I told you you would be motivated, and I have done nothing but deliver it. Give me a round of applause. I'm a prophet, yes. I knew what was coming. I believed in the power of Prof's words. Now we'll take some few questions before we move on. Are there any questions? 3, to be specific. What have you learned? He spoke about his life, his background, what inspired him, what he has learned over the years, and what he's working on, what he believes we can achieve as a university. What is your question? Going once? There's an auction, right? Going twice? Yes, there's a hand there. Please, if a microphone can be given to the student. Prof.
One at a time.
Thank you for this opportunity. Prof, please, as students aiming to bridge academia and industry, what key skills would you recommend they develop early? That's my question.
As you would imagine, I think the most important quality you need to have is learning how to work in teams. So a lot of times, you know, as a student, we focus a lot on solving problems by ourselves. But in industry, the problems are often multifaceted, and you need to bring different types of people together to work in teams. And the process of learning that is crucial to your future success, because essentially what often happens is we think of ourselves as technical people who only deliver on some area. But actually what you need to engineer in industry is group success. So whenever you have any opportunity to work in a group, you don't even have to be the lead to enable group success, right? How you learn to accommodate each other to ensure that you achieve the best builds in you the qualities later that will enable you to be successful. The other thing which I will also encourage you to do is to learn the art of not giving up when you fail. So, you know, today I talked about things and I made them look easy in that I could say, okay, after 10 years or 5 years or whatever, this is what we did. What I didn't talk about is all the times when we failed, and there were many. Now, a lot of times, most people, when they get knocked down once, they just stay down, right? So usually, when we get knocked down, I stay down, then I imagine, why did we fail? I say, I have to try again. And then, in some cases, in that process, we find success, right? So you have to have some commitment to something that you know can be done. Of course, you have to listen. But the idea of not letting failure define you can often be critical to the success of many organizations. And so those are just two things that I just wanted to share with you. Teamwork and really making sure you take into any place that you go to this ability to overcome failure. Yes?
Prof, thank you for such an empowering presentation. But Prof, the truth is that 6 months from now, or let's say a year from now, most of us are not going to remember such inspirational presentation that you have given us today. And students are having exams in the coming weeks. So from here, their attention is going to go on their slides, and they may not get time to go over some of the key information that you've given today. So my question is that, what exactly are you doing in this university to establish a foundation that is going to be able to enable the students to have a continuous education to reach the level that you want to elevate this university to? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. So what we are really doing here is to establish a collaboration between us. That collaboration will involve research, it will involve education, and it will involve some kind of outreach in some clearly defined ways. And my hope is that through the presentations that we are making, that every member of this community will feel welcome into that community, right? And so as we think about opportunities in education inspired by the values and the approaches that we've described, we will have a chance to take part in group efforts of different kinds that will enable us to participate in research that matters to you, right? That will enable us to participate in educational initiatives that matter to you, okay? And that will enable us to define some areas of interest for our desired impact. We're also hoping that we will send American students here, as well as faculty and staff, to engage you. And right after my presentation, you will meet some of the folks. And I assure you, they are even more interested in being here than I am, which is saying something, right? They're really motivated to develop those interactions. We're also going to enable access to some of our computers, some of our computational resources in joint projects. So what I urge you to do is take advantage of those different activities as they appeal to you. Now, in terms of things you forget, you and I have something in common. To be honest, I forget most things. And there are two types of knowledge for me. There's the stuff that I remember, which is very few. And then there's the stuff I know where to look up, which is most of it, right? And so we're going to take all of this information, we're going to put it on the web somewhere. So if you want to remember some of the details, you'll be able to refer to that as a resource for you. But I really hope that you get the key point of us coming down here. And that key point is through our initial interactions with Professor Adinkra Pierre and Tabiria Sumadu, we think that there's something special in the water in Sunyani, that you guys have many more Tabiria Sumadus here that we want to collaborate with, right? And we want to truly build a relationship with. And so in what time we have here, please network with us. And then afterwards, as we form the groups, let's find channels to really continue to build on the ideas. And if you decide you want to develop a strategic plan or a tactical plan, we're happy to work with your team to really do for Sunyani what we've been trying to do for SUNY Poly. So I hope this answers your question. Thank you. So at this point, oh.
Yeah, many thanks, Prof, for your presentation. You did say that most universities with superstars do not succeed because the superstars are selfish. But then you mentioned Georgia Institute of Technology has been a success story. So please tell us, is it academic leadership at Georgia that has changed the story, or what is their secret?
I think the professors at Georgia Tech, somehow in their internal structure, not the imposed external structure of leadership, decided that this is the way we want to be. And I'm sure there were some individuals, of course, that led in that way. And so a few things that I found about them. So in the early 1990s, they had a dean, Dean White, his name was. And Dean White was always looking for African-American people that he thought had the potential to succeed. And then the next thing, I noticed that they will always be in these groups where the senior professors would always be humble in how they push forward the junior professors. And in fact, they saw their role at that time as not how do we become the boss, but is how do we help to promote these young folks. And so at that time, I started to notice that this was really part of their culture. And then what was clear from that was it will then evolve to that young professor rising. And then the next thing, after 5-10 years, I see that young professor doing it to the new young professors. But I think there was a period in which there was an intentional decision by the faculty that this is the culture. Now, if you think about it, it seems counterintuitive, you know, you're now the senior guy, so you should do this. But actually, if you're the senior guy that's helping the young people come up and advising them, there's no better way to ensure the continuity and success of the system. I've seen the same thing, by the way, at Brown University. Exactly the same behavior. The senior professors always helping the younger professors, promoting them, and in that way the younger professors grow and the university flourishes. So it doesn't have to be imposed by presidential leadership. It's something the faculty or the staff can do. Now it does help, of course, if it is enabled by external leadership or the Vice Chancellor. But the danger with that is if the Vice Chancellor leaves, you don't want that culture to leave. So I strongly encourage you to try this. By the way, it's worked for me. You know, so the way I look at it is there was a time I could do a lot of work myself. Unfortunately, that time was last century. Today, I'm surrounded by lots of talented people, and I don't have so much energy. But my secret is I really like working with them, and I learn a lot from them, and maybe I have a little experience to share, but it's really enabled me to keep learning. And I think it works generally, no matter where you are, that if people see you're working for their own interest, they are more comfortable to work with us in this second stage of life where really what we're doing is share experience. And I think for Sunyani, if you adopt this, I am totally convinced that you will build really strong teams, and you will also leave behind really strong teams that you would have nurtured, right, through this process. And so with that, I'd like to just say thank you so much for this. And you're going to be hearing next from my colleague Bill Thistleton and then Steve Schneider, who will provide you with different perspectives of faculty on interdisciplinary research at SUNY Poly.
Please, we can do better. Honestly speaking, it takes a lot to share personal experiences and give us this wealth of knowledge. If you were late to this ceremony, you have lost a lot. The highlights of today's message was so impactful. As I sat and I was listening, I was like, damn, I know nothing. Because people are doing great things, and it takes just teamwork and collaboration. Professor Wole Soboyejo, thank you. We are very grateful. To students in here, we say you are diamonds in the rough. Life is not a sprint, but what? A marathon. You don't need to be intelligent to be successful. You just need to keep on learning. To our faculty members, esteemed faculty members of Sunyani Technical University, Prof is telling us today to focus on people, potential, and ideas, to collaborate and work in teams and not be superstars on our own. We have learned so much. There's humility, there's so much in what Professor is teaching us today, and through that we'll go far. Today, STU is not only bringing us ideas from around the world, we are building a new future for our university. Let's give a round of applause again to Professor. A special announcement to our students. After our next session, there will be a series of sessions that would give us the opportunity to know how we can get admission to SUNY Polytechnic in USA. Professor said they are hoping to receive a lot of us, including lecturers and students. And so please, students, don't get tired. Please wait and listen to the last but one and the last lecture, which will talk about admissions, which will talk about getting your visa in Ghana from the embassies, and it will talk about you getting an opportunity after your BSc in this institution to study further or do your research work at SUNY University at USA. Without wasting much time, I'll ask on my co-moderator to introduce the next guest speaker.
You can do better, you can do better. Ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly invite Dr. William Tesla to talk about developing collaboration and fundraising opportunities. Shall we give it to him?
Good morning. You have given me a real problem, which is fine. I'm a mathematician. What is my life? I like to solve problems. But my problem is this. I used to live in Limbe, Cameroon. Is there anybody here from Cameroon? Do I have any friends from Cameroon here? Yeah? Yeah? So you know Limbe. You know Limbe is the most beautiful place in the world. The people are lovely. The people are very friendly. And then I come to Sunyani, and I start thinking, well, maybe I have a new favorite city. The people are lovely. The people are friendly. But Limbe has an ocean. You don't have an ocean here. But you do have STU. And so in the balance, you know, there's a good competition. Now, Limbe also has Mount Fako. So, you know, the competition is very strong. But we'll see how we do. I'm on this first slide, and before I move forward, I would, if you have a phone with you and if you feel like taking a picture, you can take a picture of this slide so that you can start making contact with us. So I know that one of the things we're thinking about doing is getting people into SUNY Poly sort of in the future, maybe in the fall, maybe whatever works in your schedule. But I'd like to get you to SUNY Poly next week. And so with the contact that you see there, we're all on LinkedIn. Steve and I, Professor Steve and I both are running a laboratory, the AIX, the Artificial Intelligence Exploration Center, and we would love to have you participate. And, you know, this is not just me saying this, this is true, and this is really one of the reasons why we're here. This is obvious. I don't need to talk about that. You've seen some of these slides. Wow. That was a very fast talk. Well, thank you. Let me pull back. Somebody will explain to me later why that happened, but that's okay. I'm looking for the map of New York. There you go. So you see that light in the middle? Everybody thinks of New York as New York City. And I grew up right north of New York City. We would take the train in whenever we wanted to and do what we liked to do. But most of New York is country. Most of New York is rural. And our school, so I'm pitching it to you a little bit. Our school is not some big, scary city that anybody has to be worried about. Utica is small. Utica is friendly. I will say I spent most of my winter with my new hobby, which is shoveling snow off my driveway. So there are things that we have to watch out for. You've seen these, and here's our center. There are 3 pieces to our center, and Steve and I will explore these with you as we go through. There's a laboratory. So as you know, I'm a mathematician, and I'm motivated to study machine learning, architectures, all of this kind of traditional artificial intelligence stuff. But I'm also very motivated to study how humans interact with AI. And so I never think of AI. I think of the human AI system. And as President Wole was referring, there's a big project that we're looking at now, and my piece of that project is to try to understand how analysts, and those can be people in government, they can be people who do marketing, all sorts of things, how they can better interact with their AI systems. We also have an accelerator, and in the accelerator we worry about several things, including workforce development. And so for faculty and students in this room, I don't know how much you engage with industry, but I find it wonderful. It's been a big part of my career. I work for different companies. And so I would encourage you to make those contacts, but also keep spreading the word about the things you know, the technical things you know. Workforce development is a very, very important thing. And as Steve knows, I usually say what his studio does incorrectly, so I'm going to let him talk about that with you. We have some corporate partners, and I just want to make a quick point here. I was working with somebody, and we were having conversations about, can I say it, non-extensive entropies, some mathy kind of stuff. And then he started working for a company that was doing quantum computing. And he said, Bill, I want you on this project. And of course I said, with Kendrick, I don't know anything about quantum computing. And he said, you'll learn. And so within a couple weeks, I'm looking at some traditional machine learning topics. I think several people in this room will know about bagging and boosting, some physics topics, Ising models, and then the D-wave quantum annealing machine. And by the end of the summer, I actually kind of knew what I was doing. So I had him pulling me into the project, which was really beneficial. And from that, I learned, hey, I can do it. And I think you have the same attitude. The partners that you see here, one of them on the bottom I'm going to talk about in a minute, South Cottage Industries. We have several academic partners. We'll get you up there. We are working with, oh, actually you are up there. Steve's been working the slides. That's good. So we have several academic partners, and as President Wole was saying, you need to work on a team, and that's going to be a recurring theme in what I'm saying. So we have these academic partners, and we're very eager to work with faculty and students from STU. We have some faculty, and my fervent hope is that the next time we come here, because you're not getting rid of us, we're going to keep coming back because we love the place. Next time we come here, I would like to see some STU faculty on this slide. One of the reasons I have this slide is just to tell you a couple things about our center. Let's go. On the top, the fourth one over, Acela Abeya, came to us and he said, you know, I'm trying to do AI and I'm doing it in the education space, but I just don't have a computer to do it. So we had a lot of conversation, and so try again? Is it? There we go. So with Acela, we've started working on some of these educational things, and we were able to help him with a computer. And I have to say two things about that. On the one hand, the computer that we just bought, we're getting feedback. Maybe I'll move closer to the mic if you turn the volume down a little. Yeah. Well, not that far. Are we, okay, good. So the reason I'm mentioning Acela and the machine, one of the reasons is sometimes I teach a course in what's called big data. And one of the things that I did when I was teaching my class, I did two things. I made sure that the students were very quickly programming, and we explored different environments. I was talking with a student just the other day here, and I want to make sure that everybody is aware that if you want to do machine learning, if you want to do artificial intelligence, you don't have to always worry about buying a very, very expensive machine. I've been using a Google product called Colab for several years in my classroom. You might know about Colab, you might not. I'm just saying, C-O-L-A-B. If you're good in R, if you're good in Python, it's a beautiful environment to code in. Also, I use AWS. And I use AWS, Amazon Web Services, and they also have a free tier. So you can get onto AWS. It needs an internet connection. But this will get you started. And after you have some nice projects, you know, let's talk. And we'll talk to you about machines as well. In my big data class, we were using AWS, but I still felt like students weren't quite where they needed to be. So I got out my phone and I started calling companies, and we found a data center that we could go to. So I'm going to encourage you, this is another pitch, I'm going to encourage you to understand what are the companies here in Sunyani that are doing things that you're interested in, and go make some contact. Tell them you'll work for free. Tell them whatever you need to tell them to get in the door and see how they're doing. There are several other people here to talk about, but I'll just quickly say that the cast of characters here includes people who do mathematics like I do. There are people who are psychologists. There are people who are data scientists. There are people who are involved with wireless and edge computing and drones. And we, at our center, we just can't do these things ourselves. So again, the big theme of the morning is we have a team, and it allows us to do an awful lot. Now, I know there are a lot of grad students here, yeah? Can you raise your hand if you're a grad student? Oh, really? There are no grad students? Are there really no grad students? There's one grad student? Who else is here? Are you undergraduates? If you're an undergraduate, raise your hand. So most people just wandered in off the street and you're not an undergrad and you're not a grad student? That's interesting. Anyway, for people who are graduate students, and I'll cross graduate off and say undergrad as well, I would like to get you up on this slide. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account yet, get a LinkedIn account. Don't hesitate. Start making connections, and we'll try to get you up here. Now, the team capabilities, you don't need to know that. I mean, it's all over the map. You can see that. A lot of artificial intelligence, but a lot of other things. What I want to do is, I know it's a long morning, so I won't tell you about all of the projects, but let me tell you about a couple of these projects. Now, if you're interested in agriculture, again, get a hold of us on LinkedIn so we can start sharing ideas. Our center has a weekly meeting. We would love for you to come to that meeting in person if we can arrange it at some point. But next week, we would love for you to come to that meeting, even online. We have people from all over, and we're sharing lots and lots of ideas. On this agriculture slide, or this, let's say this agriculture project, we have this guy, Michael Poso, who came to me and said, you know, Thistleton, I hear there are good things going on in your lab. Can I come work with you? And I said, okay, what do you do? And he said, well, I do edge computing. And I want to do something maybe in an urban environment because he lives down near New York City. And I started talking with him, and I started talking with one of our companies, South Cottage Industries, and it seemed like farming was a better way to go. And so his project now is trying to develop a way that a small-scale farmer can walk around the field with a handheld device like a cell phone and talk to it and ask it which part of the field needs watering, what kind of insects are here, all the things that farmers, you know, have to concern themselves with. But we want to do it with artificial intelligence. Now, this says LLMs. He's also interested in SLMs. Do you know what those are? Can you make a guess? Large language model is L. S is small language model. Machines are getting so good, handheld devices are getting so good, that we can actually do interesting language models, advanced language models, with smaller models. What's the benefit there? So I don't want to assume knowledge because maybe you haven't done a lot of AI, but have you heard the expression foundation model? With a foundation model, we have a large neural network, and we train on essentially everything we can find. We train on the internet, and then we fine-tune. But training on the internet, man, this takes hundreds of billions of dollars. So, and the models tend to be very big, the ones that work well. cell phones are not going to be the way to do that, especially if you don't have connectivity. So we need to find a way forward so that these smaller devices can deliver the functionality that we're looking for. I'll talk about Leisha's work and then make just another quick comment, and I'll bring Steve up here. Okay, so sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's do an experiment. I'm going to say something. So there are these word association tests, right? So I say hello, you say goodbye, or you say hi. I say something and you say something back. So if I say to you, college, shout out what you would say back. College. Oh, can I use your phrase? We can do better. We can do better. I'm getting old. It's hard for me to hear. College. All right. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. Everybody doesn't say the same thing, do they? Word association tests tell you something about how people think. And so this project looks at these word association tests. And in particular, I'll tell you what worked okay and what we're having trouble with. In particular, when you do a word association test, again, you're trying to understand the human cognitive process. The word association tests that I know of are traditionally done in English. Leisha, English isn't her family's language, and so she wanted to make sure that she could do one of these word association tests in either Bengali or one of the languages of India. She had a very hard time finding those. So I'm interested in a couple things, talking to your faculty and talking to students. I want to know if you can guide me towards some word association tests, perhaps that have been developed in Ghana. And if you're a cognitive scientist, I want to work with you to try understanding even better how we can use these word association tests to understand things. Understand things like people, and understand things like large language models. Now, a large language model, ChatGPT, Llama, Gemini, whatever you like, one of the big preoccupations of these models is finding the next word, right? Finding the next word. And from that, you create a large document. So there's a face validity to how obvious it is that large language models will have something to do with association norms, and we're studying that. We also, and I can tell you what didn't work and why, and I'm sharing this with you so that you don't make my mistakes. When we were starting, I wanted Leisha to understand knowledge graphs. So if you're in computer science or in mathematics, you might know what a graph is, nodes and edges. A knowledge graph is subject, object, predicate. It links up mother, relationship, child with names. So Marguerite is my mother. It would be Marguerite, mother, Bill. So we have these knowledge graphs, and I set her working. I didn't give her a good enough research question so that she spent weeks just wandering in the wilderness. So President Wole said this, and I'm affirming it with you. Have a good research question, or your work will be unfounded and a little bit random. All right, and there are other things we're working on with her as well. I'll talk about this and then I'll be done. So Harshith, one of our students, is working on large language models, trying to understand the hyperparameter suite. So when you do a large language model, if you just do it from the web or on your phone, you're not going to be able to change it very much. But if you use the API, the Application Program Interface, that's written in Python, then you can start setting hyperparameters. So you can make your model more concise and narrow, or you can make your model more expansive and poetic and creative. You can start changing the kinds of responses you get by working these hyperparameters. And Harshith is doing a classic Now, you guys, some of you have had research methods, so you'll know what I'm saying. He's doing a classic 2 to the k factorial, where he's doing variable screening, and then we'll dive down in a little bit more. And he's making nice progress, and I'm very interested to see where he gets. All right, I could go on all afternoon, but I think it's probably time for Steve to come up. That would be you. Oh, what? Hang on. You, just give me 2 more seconds. I figured as he was walking up, I would talk on my last slide. So I've already started talking to your faculty, and I know that there's a strong interest. This can be faculty and students. There's a strong interest in working, reaching out to high schools, kind of give back and nurture the high school students. I just started working with this journal, International Journal of High School Research. I've been working as a referee, and so I read student papers and I try to give gentle, constructive guidance as to how they can improve. I think what we should do is start a mentoring program in local high schools. And I've seen high schools here. I mean, this is a big town. There are high schools all over the place. If we can work, I'd love to work with you so that I'll share with you my high schools and you share with me your high schools, and my faculty and grad students and I will start mentoring our kids and your faculty and grad students can start mentoring your kids and our kids, so that we really convince these high school students that they can do something. And I look forward, again, you got my name, reach out to me on LinkedIn, we can establish these collaborations. Does this mean I have to kill more time before Steve gets up here? No, off he goes. Thank you very much. Go and
Let's switch it now.
Good morning. I want to talk about this shirt. If you were here yesterday, it was a wonderful presentation. They gave us a nice wrapped present. I opened it when I got back to the hotel, and I was just thrilled to see this shirt. It makes me feel like part of your family. Thank you. And it brings Sunyani close to my heart. I have my SUNY Poly socks to keep myself grounded in SUNY Poly. So I just wanted to let you know that. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a social scientist. My PhD is in political science, and I've studied information technology for my entire career. In fact, what I study is new information technologies. So I started studying the internet before there was a web, and most recently, as President Wole suggests, and do something new every 10 years, I've discovered artificial intelligence along with the rest of us. So I've decided to devote the last part of my career to studying artificial intelligence. And what I'm most interested in, similar to what Professor Thistleton said, was the interplay between people and artificial intelligence. So I study people as a social science, teaching, so that we can demystify AI, so that it's not a black box, but it's a box that we can open and see what happens inside the box, ensuring that all of my students and all of the students at Sunyani and all of the faculty have access. So we want to make sure that we provide access, and then finally making sure that we have the right set of rules, if you will. So I'm going to ask all the students here, and don't raise your hands, But how many of you are using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, to do your schoolwork? Don't raise your hand, saying, okay, I do that. And then I'll ask the professors, how many of your students are using artificial intelligence to do their schoolwork? So don't turn around and look, because we still have a sense, I believe, that maybe we're not allowed to. And that's, I think, because the professors are not giving the students clear enough rules to establish what's acceptable, what's appropriate, what's responsible. And so to do that, we need to have a dialogue, a conversation. And I think the rules in Ghana, in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, may be different because of our cultural backgrounds and cultural experiences, but we should talk about those and make those rules together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through these slides fairly quickly, but I want you to pay attention to the yellow box, because the yellow box is the invitation. What can we do together? If we want to study user research, we could imagine doing cross-cultural studies using shared data collection techniques. To give you an example, when I was studying the internet, we created 25 research teams around the world, one team in each of 25 different countries. We worked together to develop a common questionnaire and survey instrument, which we then applied to study websites around the world. That gave us tremendous insight, because the way they use the web in the African countries, in the European countries, in the Asian countries was radically different than what they use the web in the American context. I suspect we'll find the same in AI. For example, there are faculty members here. Oh, I wish I knew his name. It just escaped me. That happens as you get older. Professor Moses, I can't remember his last name. He did a study from this university about how individuals who are in the textile industry are using artificial intelligence to improve their work. Now, we can do the same work in the United States and see what the differences are, and do some comparative cross-cultural analysis. And that's the strength of doing social science research in a cross-cultural context really allows us to understand. So I invite you to join that. In terms of demystification, I've been talking, and I hope I have conversations this afternoon with your distance learning and IT directors about a workshop that I would love to both further develop with your collaboration and also offer to students and faculty that introduce them to AI, that has some hands-on experiences, and we can deliver that online in a synchronous environment using the internet. And if it works really well, I'll come back and give it to you again. But again, we can develop, cross-develop training programs and deliver them to our students and faculty. In terms of providing access, I suspect that many of you use ChatGPT because it's there and it's free. But we can do better than that for you, and we can develop an understanding, and it's a very bureaucratic process, but understanding how to provision that for a university. It's not as simple as it is to just buy a simple journal subscription. It has to be developed, and you have to work through the appropriate channels so that the funds can go to the right place. And I think that that's it sounds rather bureaucratic, doesn't sound very, very scholarly, but I'm really focused on a very practical idea, which is we have to put these tools into the hands of our students and faculty so we can develop those service offerings together. And the same with the rules. My guess is, like most universities in the world today, there's a committee now either formed or about to be formed with the faculty and the deans and maybe some student representation that says, okay, what rules should we have? Well, you're setting rules, we're setting rules. Let's set the rules together so that we understand the cultural contexts and can ensure that there's a consistency. And some of your rules might be more inviting to students, and some of us in the US might say, well, that's a good idea, we can do that, and vice versa. So I think that's really important that we work on establishing governance rules, but can do so in a cross-cultural context. This is going to be tricky, so give me just one moment. And they asked me to say, oh no, you should use your slides. I'm just going to switch laptops. And this might go really well. And it's going to. There it is. Amazing. Slideshow. I forget how to use PowerPoint. Yes. Thank you. There we go. I added some slides after we already sent the deck in, so this is what happens, but thank you for your indulgence. Really, this is about collaboration, and I think we've recognized that that 1 + 1, SUNY Poly plus STU, add up to 3. It violates the spirit of the math, but I think it gets the point across, is that together we create something. We create value through the synergy that wasn't there when we started. And I think it's one of the things that's been enforced on my trip here, and this is my first trip to Africa, so it's just mind-blowing to me. But the direction of impact goes 2 directions. It's bidirectional. So Ghana improves the United States, and the United States improves Ghana. And I want to make sure that attitude is always present in our work together, that we don't think of giving and taking, but we think of working together. So I think that bidirectional impact is really important. Nuts and bolts. This is what we can do today, and I invite all of you to join any of these activities. We can run classes together. We can run classes together synchronously online, so all of the students here, to the extent that they're interested, can join in a class that's co-taught between a professor at Poly and a professor at STU. So students who think this is a good idea, pester your faculty members to do so. And I invite all of the faculty to join us in these co-taught classes. We can do those online, any number of different techniques. A couple of things. There's a QR code. I invite you to take a picture or visit the QR code. This summer, starting in roughly May 29th or June 1st, somewhere around there, I'm conducting a research seminar on artificial intelligence, and the syllabus is at that QR code, maybe, I hope, and there's a bit.ly link as well. And clicking on that, you'll see, and this is for graduate and undergraduate students as well, it's an invitation to ask a question about artificial intelligence and society. It can be from your discipline or from any discipline, to ask a question, figure out what the right question is, what the right method is to investigate that question, and then to spend 6 weeks generating some answers. I invite all of you to join that seminar. We can do it very informally, which is through an open class, and you join the seminar, engage with me and my students and all the other students, and at the end of the summer you've produced something that you can be proud of and that you've learned. It doesn't generate academic credit for you. If you'd like to do that, need to work through your university, much easier than working through mine. But I invite all of you to participate in that open class. More structured classes. I also, in the fall, will teach a class on the history of information. That will be a little different, but you're welcome to investigate how you can join that class and participate in it. And I added Professor Thistleton's slide to it as well, and you're seeing that, and I hope that's okay. I know it is. Really simple is we're developing a class that's called AI for All. It's an introduction to AI for everyone. So I think of AI for all meaning AI for all people, AI for all tasks. I'm not sure there's much that you do in your life that involves scholarship or research for which AI doesn't have a potential to play a significant role. So I think of AI for all work, AI for all students, and I would invite you to attend the class. That's the workshop that I talked about, and I'm hoping to be able to offer that online to the community here. Very simple. I run a Discord group. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Discord. Discord, has it reached the continent? Yeah? No? So visit Discord. It's a very simple online app. It's free. My students introduced me to it. And what we can do is I post things to Discord. You can read them. You can comment on them. It's kind of like a social media, but it's a little bit more sophisticated. We can also do live streams in Discord and share files. So and I forgot to put it up here, every Monday night it's a little late for you, it's 7:30 our time, which right now is 11:30 your time. We run a live stream open mic conversation about AI to which you're all invited. We will additionally provide invitations to our Friday seminars, which is in the afternoon for you. If you're interested in seeing our graduate students present each week on what they've done that week, and it's just an ongoing conversation about their work. Also in the Discord, and this connects to the Zotero bibliographic system, every time I find sources that are of interest, that I say, oh, this is a useful bibliographic source, I'll curate it, I'll post it, and if you're a member of the Discord server, you'll see the things that I found interesting that day or that week, and I'd invite you to take a look at those or to contribute your own as well. And what that does is gives you, instead of going to Google Scholar or the library databases, that gives you a more curated set of resources that perhaps would be interesting to you. If you look at my stream, the last 2 weeks have been filled with articles about how artificial intelligence is being used in Africa, in different, much in Ghana, but also around the continent as well. So that just, and you can look at that and see where my interests are going that week. I also link to podcasts, and so participating in that Discord server allows us to keep a conversation going. We talked about collaborative projects and proposals, so I think that's been covered. I'm sorry, am I doing, you need, one more slide. Yep, okay. Take a picture, please, and reach out to me on WhatsApp. I've gotten a few calls already, a few messages. If you do reach out to me on WhatsApp, tell me your name, tell me you're from Sunyani, and give me some context of what you're interested in, and I would love to be able to keep in touch with you that way. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's my last slide. I have one more thing to say. So again, to conclude, I invite all of you to join with us. Bring your Sunyani socks to keep your feet on the ground. We'll give you the SUNY Poly shirt so that you can be in our heart as well. Thank you very much.
But we can do that. Dr. Schneider, please don't go away. Dr. Tesla, please, can you join me here, please? Yes. Dr. Tesla talked about developing collaboration and fundraising opportunities, while Dr. Snyder also talked about what is AI Exploration Center and how can we collaborate with each other. Now, 2 questions each, because there's no much more time for us to spend here. Therefore, if you have any question, please come forward or raise your hands up. 2 each. 2 each. If you have any question regarding what they said, I don't want to go out for you to come and tell me that I want to ask you a question. I am not the one who spoke here, please. Any question? Any other question? Okay.
Thank you so much.
for this presentation. My question is, I am graduate student, and I just realized after your presentation I want to be in AI. I want to change my focus to AI. I have no idea. How do I start?
So Steve and I come from different disciplines, as you know, and we may have different answers, and I think that's perfectly fine. So I put up my name before, and you see Steve's contact information. Let's have a more thorough conversation. However, in a moment I'll say, artificial intelligence is not one thing. Artificial intelligence is an ecosystem. It's a whole set of related ideas and technologies. And so if somebody said to me 30 years ago, how do I start on the internet? Because of I have an engineering background as well, electrical engineering. And I would have said, well, let's get you started in routers. Let's learn about switching. For 99% of the people, that would be wrong. Right now, when I think about AI, I think about being a developer. I think about doing programming. But the way I see AI developing, that's probably important, but it's not nearly enough. So I think there's going to be a lot of action, obviously, you heard me talk about this, in understanding how humans use AI. If, I don't know if I think you said you were a graduate student, you might start talking to companies and government organizations about how you can help train workers in AI. And if you're saying, but I'm just getting started, I would say, but we're all just getting started. And understanding how people work the system is an important, important piece, and might be an easiest first step for you.
We come from very different perspectives. I have a much easier answer. You start by using AI. Open up ChatGPT, have a conversation. And don't just stop with one prompt. Spend an hour with ChatGPT on a conversation that you're interested in, and perhaps even if you're relatively new, something you know something about, that you're an expert in or that you understand, so that you get a sense of what it's like to ask a computer, because that's all AI is a computer program, right? But that you get a sense of what it's like to ask a computer to put some input in and get some output, which we're all used to, but then ask the same question again and you get different output. And now you've got to begin to build an understanding that AI is probabilistic and that it's not the same. It's not the same every time. It gives you different answers. So the way you build your understanding of, all right? The way you build your understanding of how to use AI is by doing it. And I can't emphasize that enough. You just have to start. I appreciate Bill's suggestion of talking to companies and talk to people about AI. I find, and I found it here, I found it everywhere, when I start asking people, especially the older they are, and the more experienced they are, and they want to talk about AI, I said, well, do you use it? They say, oh, no, not really. I don't have a use for it. And I say, well, then you don't know it until you use it. And so I encourage everyone to spend some time. I get comments back, I don't have the time, I don't have a job for it to do, to which I say, then come up with a job for it to do. Use it as a toy, as a plaything. Do your explorations on whatever it is, but you just have to invest the time. Spend a couple of hours a day with ChatGPT. Every time you go to a search engine, put that search in an artificial intelligence chatbot instead. Just try to replace your everyday tasks and incorporate AI into your life. And I think after, it took me a few months, and then it subsided a bit, but it took me a few months where every day I just found it so exciting and exhilarating to be able to type a prompt in and get a response, and then have a long conversation. I use the audio version of ChatGPT. I have a fairly long drive to work, so it takes me an hour in the car. So ChatGPT is my friend now. It will talk to me about anything on earth 24 hours a day, any topic. It knows a lot, and it's very nice to me. It always says, oh, that's a good question, that's a good idea. But then when you have a conversation over an hour or two, you learn its limitations. You learn that it's not always right, that it mixes things up, and you can correct it, and now you're understanding how to relate to it. And I think potentially before you use it to solve real problems with real data sets, using it to just converse would be a really good start. And that's what we try to do in our intro classes. We give you short exercises to play with and hope to stimulate. And I keep using play because I think play is very important, but we give you some short exercises. We give you some short exercises to play, which I then hope will turn into work. I hope that answers your question. Sorry about the mic.
Oh, it is time for us to slug it out up here. In a friendly way. I'm just joking. Steve and I are very good friends. But I do want to pull the focus back. Let me put it like this. I absolutely agree. And when I was learning AI, I started using it as much as possible. I would say to myself, I would ask Gemini, that's the one I use the most. I'd say, can you find me some grant applications or some RFPs, requests for funding, in this area? And then it would give me a response, and I would say, okay, so write a 3-page proposal on this, this, and this, just to keep having fun and understanding the system. But as you grow, especially if you're technically oriented, I can't emphasize enough that coding in Python is really, really important. And, you know, you can see that we're on a spectrum, Steve and I, and it is an ecosystem. But for those who are technical, learn Python, become as good a developer as you can be. And there are books that are cheap or free on building a large language model that will walk you through from start to finish on how to code up a large language model yourself. It won't be a 73 billion parameter system that costs billions of dollars, but it'll be enough that you can actually understand what these models are doing.
Thank you very much. Put your hands together for them. Michael MC, AI is really transforming the world, and it has become the backbone for every nation. Thank you.
Let us give another round of applause to them. Please, you can do better. Let's clap, let's keep clapping. They are doing quite a good job, honestly speaking. Some of the highlights of the presentation that was just given, the take home for me is, how can we as faculty members of STU motivate our students to use AI ethically? These days we give assignments and exams and students are copying everything from AI. How do we boost creativity whilst encouraging them to embrace technology? I believe there's a lot to learn and a lot to discuss. We wouldn't waste much time. We have the final 2 presentations that I asked you to wait for as students and as a researcher. How do we get admitted to SUNY Polytechnic to do our research work? How do we get the opportunity to get our visas? And what are the details pertaining to immigration that we need to know? without wasting much time, I invite our very own Wiljavian Dawson, PhD, our doctor, to give us this talk. He will be telling us more about international students, enrollment and admission at SUNY University. He's not a doctor, but in the midst of doctors, he is a doctor. Thank you very much.
Wow, they just added a title to me. I kind of like the way that sounds. Doctor. I receive it, Jesus. So basically, this is my first time in Africa. I love the hospitality, and I echo my colleagues when they say they love Ghana, because equally I love Ghana. And in fact, just up until now, I did not even book my return flight. So chances are, I might even stay in Ghana a little longer. So I'm actually going to do like a co-presentation with my colleague Kevin Hill, which if you want, you could come up now or when it's time. But basically, I'm just going to talk about the admission process at SUNY Poly. My colleague Thistleton did mention, or he did ask everybody if you were undergrad or graduate students, but nobody really raised their hand. So I'm not going to ask that, but what I will say is, we have opportunities for undergraduate students who's coming straight out of high school. We have opportunities for students who may be transferring or who may be going into graduate programs. We have opportunities for that as well. And then we also have exchange opportunities for students who may just want to come for a semester or two in an exchange program. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about SUNY Poly and about the admission process that we offer. So we've been hearing a lot about Polytechnic and a little bit about us. We are State University of New York, which is SUNY, and we are a Polytechnic university. So we have a lot of STEM-focused careers and a lot of STEM-focused courses. But more importantly, being a Polytechnic university, we have experiential learning. We have a lot of hands-on learning for our students. In fact, students who come to our university, they get the industry level hands-on experience that is necessary for as soon as they graduate, they're already ready for the employment opportunities that exist. A little bit about us. My colleague Thistleton did mention that we are located in Utica, New York, so we're not in, New York City. Anytime you hear New York, you probably think about big buildings, flashing lights, large population, but we're actually located in Utica, New York, which is about 3.5, maybe 4 hours away from New York City. Our campus is a small university. We are sitting on about 800 acres of land, so it's big in terms of land mass and maybe space, but it is small in terms of population. We have about 3,000 students altogether, and of those, we have about 800 graduate students, and about 10% of our students are international students. And currently, we're looking to diversify our international population and hopefully get a lot more of you all to come to our campus and study our beautiful majors. So we have a student to faculty ratio of 13:1. We also have an average classroom size of maybe about 18. Depending on the actual program, it could be up to 25, but overall it is relatively small. You got to meet a couple of our faculty, so you'll have the opportunity to get to meet them in person, and also when you are in class sessions, you'll also have the equal opportunity to go to their office settings and really get to know them. So you won't just be a number on campus, basically what I'm saying. You'll actually be an individual that's integrated into a robust community that we actually have at SUNY Poly. And also we have a large alumni network. I am proud to say that I am alum of SUNY Poly. I graduated in 2012. I got my Bachelor of Science degree in Communication Information Design. And here I am actually working here as an international admissions advisor. So I work primarily with students who are coming in during the admission process. Primarily F1 students, and my colleague will talk a little bit about the J1 process if there are exchange opportunities or students who want to explore that opportunity. So these are the programs that we offer. So we have 4 academic colleges at SUNY Poly. So we have the College of Arts and Sciences, we have the College of Business, we also have the College of Health Sciences, and then our largest college is the College of Engineering. So engineering is obviously the largest college, and majority of our students who come to SUNY Poly go to our engineering programs. But the beautiful thing about our programs is you're not limited to just one program. You could always dual major, or you could choose an academic major, and then we have about 35 academic minors that you could choose from as well. So let's say you have a business background, but you want to get some hands-on experience in the engineering background, excuse me, you could always minor in an engineering academic minor that we provide on our campus. And then along with these undergraduate programs, we have currently at the time 3 graduate programs. So we have data science analytics, we have computer science, and then we also have cybersecurity. So there's a lot of great things happening at SUNY Poly. You know, I will just highlight and reiterate what Professor Dr. Wole said. He mentioned that there's a lot of transformational things happening at SUNY Poly. A lot of investments, a lot of donors, a lot of research lab updates, a lot of updates to infrastructure, classroom settings, new faculty, new staff, and also new students are emerging. And we have a lot of centers that are innovative enough to prepare our students for the next generation, especially this new surge, this industrial surge that we're talking about, especially in AI. So we work with a lot of companies, and we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of contracts with these companies where when our students do graduate, they can secure not only job opportunities, but also internship opportunities when they are actually studying at SUNY Poly. So we have a lot of resources on our campus. So one of the resources that we offer is our Career Service Office, which if you look at the bullet points, I'm hoping you all could see it, they do resume and cover letter workshops. They do internship and career exploration workshops. I know myself as a student, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I was graduating from high school, so the Career Service actually helps out a lot in terms of career exploration. They also provide interview preps. So sometimes it could be intimidating when you are going for a job interview and you may have 6 or more people just kind of asking you questions. You may not know how to answer that question, or even more importantly, which we'll talk about, the visa processing, you have to go for an interview. So just having preparation when it comes to interview prep, this will help prepare you so that when it comes time to it, you won't stumble on your words, or you won't be too nervous. You'll be able to handle it with ease. So we also do networking workshops where we allow students to get networking opportunities. And then we do biannual career and graduate fairs where we bring companies on our campus every semester where students could actually network with the reps of these companies and find job opportunities. And then we utilize a platform called Handshake, which I won't go too much into it, but I've heard LinkedIn being mentioned. It's kind of like a LinkedIn meets Facebook, and basically you create a profile and you'll have access to thousands of companies, meetings, internship opportunities, and you name it. And then also a part of our resources, so I work in international admissions, so chances are you will be working with me throughout the entire admission and enrollment process. But once you actually get on campus, I'm going to hand you off to my colleague, Kevin Hill, who is the Director of International Student Services. You will be working directly with her on campus. So once your foot is on campus, you'll be working with her, and she'll help you with OPT, CPT, STEM OPT, and other opportunities that exist. So I will introduce Kevin Hill, and I will let her come on and speak a little bit about our International Student Service Office and what resources that this office provides. So please, Kevin Hill.
Thank you. Sadly, my return ticket is already booked, but that doesn't mean that I can't come back. So we're looking forward to the next trip. My office is the Office of International Student Services. We work with all international students that come to SUNY Poly, as well as the scholars, And there's a reason why we're in place at SUNY Poly, and that reason is international students and scholars face extra challenges and extra hurdles. Immigration is one of them for sure, but also the question of how are you going to fit in at SUNY Poly? You're comfortable here at a large university, and SUNY Poly is relatively small, and upstate New York, and I think snow was mentioned at one point. Are you going to feel comfortable once you arrive on campus? So in combination with immigration advising and assistance throughout the visa application process, Will Javian and I both work with you to make sure that you feel comfortable once you're on campus. We are, the International Student Services Office is the go-to resource for everybody, every international student on campus who has any question and they don't know where to go. You might not know the right office to ask a question. You might not know the best place to go shopping or where you need to go to get a driver's license. And when you don't know those things, you can come to me and I will help you find the answers. Will Javian and I also work before the semester has even started to hold pre-arrival webinars so we can help advise students and discuss with students the visa application process, visa interviews, and how to best prepare and be ready for what can really be a very intimidating process. We know that we know that the visa application process and the U.S. Embassy can be quite intimidating. So we'll help you with those questions, and we also help you to determine what you should pack. Being told to scooch. We also help you to determine what you should pack, what you should be prepared for with your travel plans and how to plan your travel, and just what to expect once you arrive on campus and life on campus. So I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know you've been sitting for quite some time, but we have time to discuss these things later as well, and I'm going to turn it back over to Will Javian to discuss more of SUNY Poly's resources. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So yeah, as she mentioned, we do provide pre-arrival seminars for all of our students who actually apply, were accepted, and is now about to go through the interview process or actually transition from Ghana or wherever you are in the world to SUNY Poly. So one of the things I keep hearing on all of these presentations is collaboration and teamwork. So once you get on campus, we encourage you to really get involved on campus because this is essential when it comes to finding job opportunities. There is a video playing, but basically she's just telling you the same thing I'm telling you. She's the president of our Student Government Association, and she's just encouraging you that once you are a student on campus to get involved with all of the clubs and organizations that we actually have on campus. So we have over 30 clubs and organizations for you to choose from. And along with these clubs and organizations, we also have student government organizations that you could also participate and get involved in. We also have NCAA Division III athletics. We have sports in soccer or football. We have sports in baseball, basketball, cross country, lacrosse, and we also have a golf sport. So you could get involved with those at a collegiate level, and then if you didn't want to get involved in that at a collegiate level, you could always participate that at a recreational level in one of our intramural or our club sports. So one thing about getting involved that's very important is, you know, a lot of times our students would come to campus and they would just drown themselves in their education, which is very important because you need to get good grades in order to graduate. But also, once you graduate, it's not about what you know, but it's about who you know. So this is modeled pretty much, and I believe that this is universal language right here, where when you do actually graduate, you want to make sure that you've also built a network, and you've also built experiences, whether it's through internships or just getting involved as much as you can on campus. A little story. There's a student who came, it was a graduate student who's actually enrolled on our campus right now. So he wanted to just, after he got his acceptance letter, I issued his I-20. He's about to schedule his visa appointment. He wanted to come to campus just to kind of get a feel for what campus looked like. So he came to the United States on a B or a visitor visa, And basically, he just wanted to explore the campus and just see what it looked like. I gave him a tour. I gave him an overview of the program. I also allowed or introduced him to Bill Thistleton, which he was able to meet. And as soon as he got there, he loved the campus. He loved the feel. He loved the environment. And on the tour, an interesting thing happened. We were walking through CGAM, which is Center for Global Advanced Manufacturing, and basically I'll talk a little bit more about that, but for the most part we were walking through that on the tour, and just in a split minute on that tour we ran into one of our faculty member who was actually conducting a summer program with high school students, and basically this particular faculty member offered him GA opportunity. So this is like a job opportunity on campus when he actually comes on campus. So this is just an example of just getting out there and just networking with people and also getting involved on campus, because you never know what opportunities will be at your door when you actually get involved. So we do have housing on campus, but majority of our graduate students or majority of our transfer students, they opt to live off campus, but we do have 4 housing units available. So if you are interested in living on campus when you decide to come, that is something that we could definitely discuss. But we have Adirondack, Hilltop, Mohawk, and also Riscony Hall. They all have different styles of housing units, and they're all pretty unique in the terms of what they offer as well. A little bit about Utica. Utica's a small city. I would probably compare it to Sunyani versus Accra or a bigger city. So for the most part, we have about 65,000 as the population in Utica. There's a lot of recreational things to do, a lot of parks, a lot of trails to go hiking, a lot of naturist things to do to really get in tune with your nature and environment. And we also have, along with that, we have a very diverse community. We have a refugee center that we've had over 45 years, and along with this refugee center, it brings immigration from all over the world, but it also brings a unique diversity in the city of Utica that you're not going to find in other cities located in, let's say, upper part of New York and stuff like that. So it's very unique. We also have over 42 languages that are spoken in our high school. So this just shows the diversity level that we have. And along with this, we have great food. I must highlight that. A lot of great food and a lot of other great resources available. So a little bit about the funding and the scholarship model. So just, if you will, just kind of take a screenshot. I'm not going to run through all the numbers and the figures, but these are estimates of what it would cost to attend SUNY Poly per year, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. And one of the generous things that we provide at SUNY Poly is scholarship opportunities for both graduate and undergraduate. So we offer merit-based scholarships. So at the graduate level, you're looking at anywhere from a partial merit-based scholarship of $5,000 all the way up to $9,000. And the way it's awarded, it's per year, which is up to 2 semesters. So per semester up to a maximum 2 semesters. And then at the undergraduate level, the scholarship is whatever it is per year up to a maximum of 4 years. Or if you are coming in as a transfer student, then it'll be up to a maximum of 3 years. So a little bit about our deadlines. We have spring and fall semesters. So students who want to apply for this fall, our application is actually open all the way up until June 1, so you have that opportunity. And then for spring semester, the application closes November 1. And it opens up again the next year, August 1 of each year. And I kept it really brief, but here's my contact information if you do have any questions about the admission process. I'm also on WhatsApp, so feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp as well, and I'll be glad to connect with you. Yep, good.
Please let's keep the applause coming. We'll call briefly on Madam Kevin Hill and Dr. Taburi to give the last session. What are we getting? What is the MOU we signed? How are we linking up with SUNY Polytechnic? Briefly.
Hello. I would like to clarify, my office also works with visiting researchers and faculty members as well. So there are two different types of visas that may allow you to come to the US. One is for F1 students, and that's for individuals who are going to be enrolled in a full-time program of study. The other is a J1 visa, which allows you to come to the US for a period of time, anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, up to 2-3 years, to work at SUNY Poly. You can instruct and teach some classes, you can do research, and we do have a number of visiting researchers on our campus that are present as J1 visiting scholars, and some of them are from Ghana as well. So I will help you with that visa application process. My office assists with that process and will guide you through the entire process of going to the embassy and applying for the visa. And then I do provide guidance once you are here at SUNY Poly as well. Are there specific things that we want to share? Okay. Okay.
Just how to prepare for, how the G1 process moves, take documents from
Okay. Okay. So if you are interested in becoming a visiting researcher or scholar at SUNY Poly, the first step is to find a department or a faculty member on our campus that you would like to work with, because you need a host at SUNY Poly, somebody who's going to welcome you and write an invitation letter for you to come. And with that host and that person that you're going to work with at SUNY Poly, you will then determine what your work is going to be while you're with our campus, how long you're going to be present at SUNY Poly, and a whole number of other things, where you're going to live, if you're going to be residing on our campus, will you receive a stipend, things like that. That's what you will work out with your department. Once you have discussed all of these options and requirements with your department, then I would begin the visa document application process with you, and I would work with you step by step to make sure that you have everything you need to attend your visa interview and feel comfortable going into that interview, which, like I said earlier, can be somewhat intimidating. And we will work with you to make sure that you are approved for that visa, and then help you to arrange your travel plans to come to SUNY Poly. Good? All right.
Yeah, so all the processes she spoke about, I've been through all of them. And starts with getting your research defined. And if you're interested, you see the research office, they'll coordinate it in such a way that it gets to us. And Prof, please, can you, yes. So all faculty that are interested in doing their research, if you're doing a PhD, that's mostly better. If you're doing a PhD and you realize that you're stuck with equipment, and especially those in engineering and humanities as well. So if you're stuck somewhere, you need help, we have professors that will guide you to shape your research work. And if you have to come to US, we have a center, we have different centers. We have Center for Smart Infrastructure and Materials. So those in the built environment, that center will be ready to receive you. We have another center in AI exploration. Those that are doing electrical and electronic engineering, that are doing research in AI and other things, that center will be ready to also, we have about 14 centers. So whatever you do, you are captured in one way or the other under one of our research centers. And so if you need, we'll give that information to the research office, and once you go through which one is your area. When you contact us, I'm always online with Prof. Owusu, so we can always get in contact back and forth. But we want it to be coordinated so that we can actually attend to people and help people. So this is just on the research front. So when that process is done and you are identified, your project is identified, a center is identified for you, Then a formal invitation letter will be an appointment letter will be written to you, and then Ms. Kevin Hill takes over and then coordinate with you with documents, and we'll get to what we call the DS 2019. That is what, it's just like the I-20. So that's what you will use as a scholar and researcher to apply for your visa. And then we work on that. So the process is here to stay. Prof has already given us assurance that it's here to stay. All we need to do is to be able to organize funding for different projects, and we are working on it every day. So there will definitely be opportunity for a lot more people to do their research back at SUNY Polytechnic. And I frequent back and forth. I'm always here teaching. I'm always here doing research. You can meet me in the street. We can talk, and then we can make the process simple. All right. Thank you very much for everyone that was here today. I'll give the vote of thanks. It's been an amazing one. This is the best session we've had in Ghana. We've been to a lot of schools, and this has been the best. We thank you very much for staying. God bless you, and I'll invite Reverend to close us.
All right, thank you very much, please. I think we've seated for a long time. Let's be on our feet and let's pray. Father, once again, we want to thank you for having been with us throughout this public lecture that was started yesterday. It's been very insightful, very fruitful, impactful. We thank you for the lives of the guests and the presentation they made. Thank you for granting them the energy, granting them the insight and the clarity of thought and precision of delivery that, Lord, you granted to them. Father, we pray that, Lord, these engagements will be more fruitful even unto us as, O God, they live. We'll continue to appropriate them in our daily activities as an institution, so the benefits, O God, that, O God, we are looking forward to get from this partnership, O God, will be evident. Continue to be with us for the rest of the day. We commit them unto you as they live. Wherever they go, you shall be with them. You shall guide and protect them. Father, we pray for everyone here, O God, as we live, all of us, we commit our lives unto you. Preserve our going and our coming, and let every engagement, O God, we get into the rest of the day be successful. We thank you and we bless you for having been with us. In the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus. Now the Lord keep you, the Lord bless you, the Lord preserve you, protect you, and watch over your souls as you live here in Jesus' name. Amen.
Let us give the final round of applause as we end. Students are kindly admonished to please sit down. Students are supposed to sit down. Faculty members and the team from SUNY University can just go outside and take a picture. That's fine. So students, please sit. Faculty members, thank you for being here. The SUNY Polytechnic team, God bless you.